Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I am your host Armando Venditti, and in this episode, I'm going to be taking a look at an artist that some people think is a musical genius. Some people think that he was nuts. Other people just didn't have any time for him. I'm going to be doing a top 10 album ranking on Prince. Here we go. Okay. Prince was born Prince Rogers Nelson on June 7th, 1958, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He basically, I would describe him as a child prodigy. He began playing piano at the age of 8, as his father taught him. In his teens, he formed a band called Grand Central, and they were a band that played R&B covers, Earth, Wind, and Fire, etc. In this band was also a guy by the name of Andre Anderson, who would later be known as Andre Cymone. Now, I do believe that Andre Cymone and Prince were cousins. So, um, from Grand Central, he basically gained a reputation as being a fantastic guitar player, arranger. He's a multi-instrumentalist, ladies and gentlemen. Prince can play guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, what have you. Signed his first contract with Warner Brothers Records at the age of 17. Released his first album, For You, in April of 78. And from then on, the rest, as they say, is history. But for this episode, again, I'm going to be ranking my favorite top 10 Prince albums. So starting off at number 10 is Artificial Age. Released September 26, 2014. This was his return to Warner Brothers after a good number of years, releasing his albums through different labels, either independently or through associations with Universal, Sony, etc. This album marked a return again to Warner Brothers, and in return for this album and another album, Plectrum Electrum, that was released simultaneously, Prince retained ownership of his master recordings, which is what he wanted all along. This album and Plectrum Electrum are totally different. This album, Artificial Age, is more R&B influenced, with songs like the title track, Clouds, The Breakdown. There's another track on the second half of the album called Find My Way Home, which is a beautiful track. That track is sandwiched between two spoken word interludes, Affirmation 1 and 2. The album overall for me is a return to form. He was on the right track in terms of regaining his commercial viability. Unfortunately, he passed away soon after this, and we'll never know what could have possibly have been, unfortunately. So again, it is a return to form, I think, for me. Number 9 is the self-titled second album, Prince. Released in 1979. This was released shortly after For You came out. He started recording it. And I do believe that this was recorded within about a month to 6 weeks. He was very proficient in the studio. For the first 4 albums, he recorded mainly by himself, played all the instruments, engineered, produced. By this point, he got rid of the role of executive producer basically having somebody overseeing what he was doing and sort of reining him in financially when they thought that he needed to be reined in. At this point, there was a point where Warner Brothers asked Ray Parker Jr. to go and listen to what Prince was doing in the studio and maybe sort of act as, again, as an executive producer. And, Ray Parker Jr., guitar player, played with, was in the group Radio. After listening to what Prince was doing, he reported back to Warner Brothers, and Ray Parker Jr. said, "You don't need me to watch this kid. He knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't need a chaperone." So Warner Brothers backed off. The album came out, and it's a good album. It's a good album, featuring the tracks "Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad," which was a single, and which features a blistering guitar solo from him, just near the end. Just great. Just really funky track. Also features tracks like "Sexy Dancer," "I Feel for You," "Bambi," "It's Gonna Be Lonely." So yeah, he was basically on his way at this point. And again, just because these albums are at a lower end of the ranking doesn't mean that I like them any less. There's just some other albums that you sort of gravitate more towards. And again, in these lists, they have to go somewhere, right? So, anyways, coming in at number 8 for me is Parade. Released in 1986. This was also the album that served as a soundtrack for his movie Under the Cherry Moon. Recorded with the Revolution. His last album to be recorded with the Revolution. This follows Around the World in a Day. And what I like about it is different musical styles. You have tracks like Christopher Tracy's Parade, I Wonder You, New Position, Venus de Milo, which is a beautiful little short interlude instrumental that he did. Kiss, it had the huge hit Kiss, which he originally wrote and gave to another up and coming band that were being produced by Brown Mark, his bass player Maserati. They worked on it, and after Prince heard what producer David Z, Bobby Z's brother, did with the production, he took it back because he didn't want, he liked it after all. So, and my favorite track on the album, Mountains, which for me, I love that track. I've always loved that track. I was able to find the 10-minute extended version on Discogs years ago. Paid a good penny for the vinyl for it. But you know what? That's what happens when you love music. So that's number 8. Number 7 is going to sort of take people off a little bit and take them off or rub them the wrong way. Number 7 for me is Purple Rain. Massive hit, commercial peak. And some say that he never recovered from that commercial success. Released in 1984, along with the film, features 9 tracks on the album. Also features extra bonus B-sides. What can be said? When Doves Cry, Let's Go Crazy, Purple Rain, I Would Die for You, Baby I'm a Star, Darling Nikki, Computer Blue, Take Me, by the way, I said Take Me With You. It was a master stroke of genius. He was just on this wave of songwriting that anything he wrote was gold to him and to others around him. Um, Incidentally, for those who are interested, he did a benefit concert at First Avenue in 1983, August of 83, which was also Wendy Malvoin's debut performance with the band as an official band member. In, in that show, he recorded the bulk of the Purple Rain album because they were used, the music there was used as the bed tracks for what was going to be the Purple Rain soundtrack. In this video, you will see an 11-minute version of Purple Rain featuring an extra verse that was later cut out. And it's just brilliant, just bloody brilliant. As a footnote, it's been found out that Stevie Nicks was approached by Prince to help write lyrics for the track, and she heard it and she thought that if she tried, she would ruin the song. She was too scared to write anything for it. And prior to releasing the track Purple Rain, he sent the track off to Jonathan Cain of Journey because they had a track out faithfully. And because according to Prince, it sounded, the chord structure on the piano sounded too similar to what Faithfully was. So the story goes, and Steve Perry has said this, they heard the track and they liked it. Yes. And Steve Perry said, yeah, there are basic similar chord structures there, but you know what the hell, release it. So he got their permission to do it. And what can be said about Purple Rain? Just a massive hit. The reason why it's low on my list is that I tend to think that it's been overplayed, and it's usually at the top of everyone's, top 10 list of albums that they listen to. And for me, this list wasn't about what was popular at the time. I mean, yes and no, but for me, it was mostly about where I go back to mostly, what albums I go back to listen to. So yeah, that's number 7. Number 6 is The Rainbow Children. Released in 2001 under a special agreement with EMI. Very different album. Mostly live instruments. They was playing live drums, etc., bass guitar. Considered to be very spiritual album. They called it his Jehovah Witness album. Beautiful, misunderstood piece of work. The title track is a 10-minute tour de force, and it's basically jazz. And he does lower the pitch in his voice for some sections. And around the 5 to 6 minute mark, he goes into this musical section where he plays guitar, and you can just hear the influence of Santana on him in this track. And it's got to be said, Carlos Santana and Sly Stone were a major influence on him, along with Jimi Hendrix. But mostly on this track, you hear Carlos Santana coming through loud and clear. Other tracks on this album, The Work, She Loves Me for Me, The Sensual Ever After, which is an instrumental tour de force, I call it, The Last December. So, I mean, yeah, great album. Long album, but you know what? Sometimes long albums work. Coming in at number 5 is The Gold Experience. Released September 22nd, 1995. This was his first album to be released that featured his unpronounceable name symbol on an album cover under, as you know, as his moniker. Released through Warner Brothers and NPG Music. This album has a bit of a history. In 93, he was recording. I mean, Prince was always prolific in terms of writing ability. This man lived, breathed, and ate music completely. He was recording 2 albums at this point. Come and The Gold Experience. Now, he was dying to get out of his record deal at this point with Warner Brothers. So his idea was to deliver 2 albums that would fulfill his contract with Warner Brothers, and then he would move on to do whatever the hell he wanted to do. So they took the albums, but they released Come, but they didn't release The Gold Experience right away. Now, for him, he was very difficult to deal with in that he was like, he wrote a song, recorded it, mixed it, gave it to the record company, and his idea was, when I give it to you, you release it. You don't question me. You don't ask for more. This is what I'm giving you. Do it now. Do it now. And they were trying to tell him, no, you can't do that. Like, for example, they had to have a promotion campaign. Now, let's just give you a number. A promotion campaign goes for anywhere up to like 200, starts at probably like $250,000 for a proper promotional campaign. And, these record company executives have to go to their shareholders and they have to justify spending said money. And usually an album cycle goes from like a year to 18 months. And Prince at this point was just recording, releasing, whether it was physically or whether it was over the internet or some other way. But he didn't want to hear no from Warner Brothers. So they kept the album on the shelf, and he had already moved on to what was going to become Emancipation in 96. This album for me is a better album than Emancipation. Okay? Haters start yelling at me now. On this album, you have P Experience. P Control. Sorry. Endorphin Machine, Dolphin, Shh. We March, I Hate You, Billy Jack Bitch, the Gold. So I was going to say The Gold Experience. Gold. Shy. All these tracks that for me at that point he had returned. It was a really solid album. Billy Jack Bitch also features Lenny Kravitz on backing vocals. And for some reason, it didn't fly, whether it was Warner Brothers' lack of promotion or whether it was that Prince didn't want to tour it properly. I have no idea. But this album suffered from something. Musically, it didn't suffer on any level. Musically, it was a fantastic piece of work. For the longest time, this album has been out of print and subject to litigation issues due to The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, which was released also as a standalone single and on this album. That issue has since been settled, and Legacy Sony has reissued The Gold Experience on CD. So if you want to get this, go get it. You won't be disappointed. That's number 5. Number 4, Dirty Mind. released October of 1980. His third album for Warner's. 8 tracks. The album barely clocks in at 29 minutes. It was to the point that when it was released on vinyl, the space between the tracks on the album were larger in order to make it feel like a longer album in duration. But songs like the title track, When You Were Mine, Got a Broken Heart Again, Do It All Night, Uptown, Head, Sister, Party Up. You've got dance, you've got R&B, you've got new wave, you've got all of his influences that are coming, like that he's listening to. It's just a great album, and the songs aren't overproduced. They're it sounds like that they were demo tracks that were recorded, which they were pretty much. And Warner Brothers, when he delivered the album, first of all, that album cover, trench coat, bikini briefs, scarf around the neck, him looking the way he's looking on the album cover, like, come on, you know what I mean? Warner's was telling him, this isn't going to sell. We need to either punch up the music a little bit, add more overdubs, make it more lush, more produced. And he said, no. And they relented. And it was a good turning point for him. This was when the sexuality aspect of his lyrics came in full force. Like, there was no way around that. Where am I on the list here? Number 3, Controversy. Released in 1981, I believe October of 81. Another 8-track LP. Fantastic. It's again, it's post-disco, it's funk, it's new wave, it's R&B, it's jarring in its subject matter. It's Prince. There's no other way around it. The title track as a single, Sexuality, Do Me Baby, which it has come out that it was written by Andre Simone, or he came up with the bass line or the rhythm track for it, and Prince apparently took it. Side 2, you have Private Joy, Ronnie Tuck to Russia, Let's Work, which was released as a single. Also, promo single, I believe. Any Christian, Jack You Off, which is a funny track on the end, but I mean, it again, this is what he did at the time. His lyrics were double entendres or just full on out dripping sexuality. That's what he did. But I mean, Prince to me was the package. Just a little side note. Excuse me. I've had conversations where people have said to me, yeah, Prince and Michael Jackson, they were two of, like they were two contemporaries that, were the best, like for me to compare Michael Jackson to Prince is like comparing Robert Plant to Pee Wee Herman. Prince, to me, outweighed and outclassed and outplayed Michael Jackson to the end. And again, I'm going to get haters, but that's my opinion. I don't see Michael, I've never seen Michael Jackson as a musician, at all. But I digress. Number two, 1999. Now, just because it's at number two doesn't mean I don't I love it any less than my number one. But again, these are albums that I usually go back to, right? Which is how I rank them. So 1999, again, released in 1982, double album, 11 tracks. It was released in 2 volumes in some territories like Colombia. What can be said? This was where, I mean, he started to use the LinnDrum more on Controversy. But 1999 was where the LinnDrum was being used ad nauseum. The title track, which was originally released as a single, the first one from the album, it didn't do really well. And then they released Little Red Corvette as the second single. That took off. I believe it was a top 10 single. They chose to re-release excuse me, 1999 again, and then it took off. What else is on the album? Delirious, which is a rockabilly track, which is all right. Let's Pretend We're Married, won't even go there. DMSR, Automatic, which was a single in Australia. Lady Cab Driver, Something in the Water Does Not Compute. Lady Cab Driver is my favorite track, which features Joe Jones in the middle section with colorful vocal overdubs. Enough said. All the critics love you in New York. Free, International Lover. Just an amazing album, an amazing piece of work. This was the first time I ever heard of Prince in 1982. Just amazing. I had no idea that Controversy existed or Dirty Mind at that point. I just thought this was the first album and it was just out the door. Forget about it, as they say. Just a great piece of work. Incidentally, there was a track that he was working on called Extra Lovable. And I've heard it in bootleg form, very, very bad, grainy bootleg form. I've also heard it cleaned up. And I do believe that if it should have been released at the time on the album. It's never been released. I don't think it will be, due to what is said near the end of the song, at the end of the song. But, it's unfortunate. Coming in at number one, Sign of the Times. Now, this album has a history. It dates back and was released in March of 87. It dates back to 1986. Prince was recording an album with the Revolution called Dream Factory. Now, I have a version of that album, a configuration from July of 1986. There are 19 tracks on the album, and it's not improper bootlegs. It's not grainy sounding versions or mixes. It is a proper version that was put together but never officially released. I paid $50 for it on Discogs, and now you can't get it anymore. So I'm lucky I got it when I did. That version has 19 tracks on it. But back to Sign of the Times. He recorded an album called Dream Factory. He then disbanded the Revolution. He then started work on a project that he called Crystal Ball. And he also recorded a project that went under the name Camille. I also have that on bootleg form, but I digress. Camille was recorded, mixed, produced, ready to go. Weeks before its release, he canceled it. There were 8 tracks on Camille. And what he did for that was he changed the pitch of his voice to a higher level to make it sound more androgynous. And it's a good album. I mean, but again, there are 8 tracks, and I do believe 6 of those tracks ended up that on what would eventually become Sign of the Times. Sign of the Times originally was going to be a triple vinyl release, 22 tracks. He sent the album to Warner Brothers. The head of Warner Brothers at the time called him and said, look, we have an issue. We can't release a triple album. We can't justify it. Parade didn't sell well. Around the World in a Day didn't do what they expected it to do as compared to Purple Rain. So they said, look, we can do a double album. Can you cut at least 5 songs from this to make it a double album? So he did. And what was released, was a tour de force. I mean, the title track, Play in the Sunshine, Strange Relationship, Starfish and Coffee, It, You Got the Look, The Cross, It's Gonna Be a Beautiful Night, Adore, If I Was Your Girlfriend, I Can Never Take the Place of Your Man, which, by the way, was a demo that was originally recorded in 1979. And I've heard that version because I have the massive super deluxe Sign of the Times set that came out in 2020. This album, to me, magic. Pure and simple. Magic. There's not much else that can be said. He didn't tour this album in North America. He concentrated more on Europe. And it was just phenomenal what this album represented to me. It was great. It's fantastic. As an honorable mention, I'm going to mention one album, which is Welcome to America. Now, this album was recorded, in 2010, but was shelved. Instead, he opted to release an album called 2010, which for me was a bad move. 2010 as an album, it's not really good. It was released online, and I think in the UK it was released also with newspaper subscriptions, etc. Welcome to America came out July of 2021, and it's a good album, solid album. Songs like the title track, which is a commentary on society today. Um, Check the Record, which is just funky, down and dirty, without swearing, but down and dirty. Um, Another track that could also be considered a social commentary, Born to Die. So yeah, it is a good album. I think that if he had released Welcome to America when he wanted to, it would have at least gone top 30. But again, I'm just a music fan, so I don't know for sure. It's just my opinion. So yeah, there's my list for Prince. As I said on the intro of the channel, I was going to be covering different types of music, rock, pop, jazz fusion. I mean, like I said, there were no limits, and there aren't any limits when it comes to music, in my opinion. Music is subjective. Music, it's an opinion, you know. So, yeah, that's my list, and please, in the comments below, give me your list. Let me know what you think are your favorite Prince albums, if you have any. And let's get a bit of a dialogue going. You know, so yeah, that's it for this video. Hope it wasn't too long. Please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can keep on top of any new videos that I'm going to have be coming out. I've got this one will be posted next week. What I'm going to try and do, guys, is I'm going to try and do every Friday, I'm going to do an album ranking. See if that goes, if that flies, And also, leave me artists that you'd like me to cover. Maybe artists that I haven't heard yet. So, yeah, that's it for today. So, hope you guys are having a great day, and we will catch up with you very soon. Bye for now.